Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is the news and news coverage. And given the time of year, I'm also thinking about Hanukkah, but that comes later. We'll talk about that later in the show. Now about the news. It's called news, but really, it's entertainment. The news industry has changed. No longer do we receive objective reports on items of the world, domestic or local import. Nowadays, when it comes to broadcast, print, and online news reporting, the objective is twofold: to entertain and to manipulate. News used to be informative. The overriding agenda of news reporting used to be to strive to help the viewing, listening audience better understand their society by helping people understand the world in which they lived. Certainly a grandiose theme. Night after night, year after night, any time when Walter Cronkite signed off his broadcasts with these words, "That's the way it is," he meant it. That was the way it is. But today it's no longer the way it is. Today it's the way we want you to think it is. Today's media focuses on the extremes. In the mainstream media, there is no longer a middle of the road. It's all about extremes. It's about hyperbole. It's about eliciting a reaction, a gut reaction, from the audience. The standard coverage of events is delivered with exaggerated norms by hyperbolic speakers with extremist views. Extremism makes for better and more interesting stories. There's no doubt about it. Extremism and extremists are by definition a small sliver of a group. But in today's news coverage, within the few exceptions, they become the center of the story. Coverage of the January 6th storming of the Capitol is the perfect example of the mainstream media coverage. What happened on that day was horrific. But it hardly represents the entire right or the Republican voter base. Yet, if you read or watch the coverage of January 6th and its aftermath, one would think that every person who dared vote Republican was an extremist who broke into the Capitol or at least supported it. The mainstream media is almost exclusively focused on the extremists, and their coverage of events are made to appear extreme. In reality, the events and the people are extreme. The people they cover are extreme. There's no doubt about it. The issue is that these people and the news events do not represent normative life. That's the issue. There are two great cliches in journalism, or there used to be at least. There were two criteria for a news item to be worthy of front page coverage. Number one was, if it bleeds, it leads. And number two is, if a dog bites a person, it's not news. But when a person bites a dog, that's news. Nowadays, if it's not bleeding, make it look like it is. Standard nightly mainstream headlines scream of impending doomsday scenarios. The future of democracy is on the line. America as we know it is at stake. This is the most crucial election in history. The list of hyperbole continues on and on. Its purpose is to make the viewer or reader think that the sky is falling and that the evil other is at fault for the falling sky. That the other, those who do not fall in line with your political point of view, are the primary cause of all the problems. That's a problem in and of itself. The second cliche speaks to the breaking down of norms of behavior. Take, for example, the border with Mexico. Coverage on the right presents Biden and Harris blithely permitting an inhumane situation to build up and overflow on the southern border. According to coverage from the left, Trump and the right separated families and housed them in concentration camps. A new era is upon us. It's an era of extremes. There is almost no middle ground and certainly no common ground. Just take a look at college campuses. If you happen to believe in God and live a traditional lifestyle that respects traditional values, you are perceived on campus as an oppressor and a remnant of a prehistoric era. Those who advance the ideas of tradition for younger generations and for future generations are transformed into rejectionists. They are looked at as outright evil. They become demons because in the eyes of the other, the traditionalist threatens modern values. And fighting evil makes for great news. Today, headlines, leads, and teases are all exaggerated, meant to keep you on the edge of your seat, whet your curiosity, not your intellect. The intent is to draw in the audience. And then at the end of 90 seconds, a video of 30 or 60 or even 90 seconds, a read of that long also, how often are we disappointed by the actual story? But the headlines were good. Actually, they were great. That's because as much as it's about extremes, today's news industry is even more about entertainment. Coming up next, Points of View. First up is a column from the Jerusalem Post. It was published on December 16th, and it's authored by David Gerntz. The piece is entitled, "What is the connection between chess and Judaism?" Opinion. Subtitled, "Some people believe that Jewish chess players use the same way of thinking while playing chess as they were studying Talmud." This is a fascinating piece filled with speculation about how and why chess has become so important to Jews, and at the same time, how the impact that Jews had and have had on the game of chess over the centuries. You do not have to be a chess player to appreciate this column. It is fascinating. This is how Gerntz begins. No other game or sport was shaped and influenced by Jews in such a significant way as chess. The list of Jewish and Jewish father chess grandmasters, the highest title awarded by the World Chess Federation, the FIDE, is long, as it is the list of Jewish world chess champions. Outstanding Jewish chess players like Garry Kasparov, Bobby Fischer, Emanuel Lasker have gone down as legends in the history of chess. Most recently, the reigning world chess champion, GM, the Grandmaster, Magnus Carlsen, was challenged by a Jewish GM, Ian Nepo, that's his shortened name, at the FIDE World Championship 2021 in Dubai. By Magnus Carlsen managed to defend his title and keep the crown of world chess champion. Nevertheless, Carlsen stated before the championship, "Today, Nepo is one of the few capable of defeating me." Gerntz relates some really remarkable statistics about chess. And this is what he writes, and it's jarring. According to ChessBase, Beersheba is the city with the world's highest rate, as of 2005, of chess grandmasters per capita. One grandmaster to every 22,875 residents. These statistics left people speculating as to whether there is some particular reason that so many of the greatest chess players were or are Jewish. That stat would lead us to the inevitable question: what is the connection between Jews and chess? And is there a deeper alliance behind these numbers? Gerntz puts it this way: what is the connection, he asks. Some attribute the outstanding success of Jewish chess players to the intensive study of the Talmud cultivated in Judaism for thousands of years, and compare the way of thinking in chess with Talmudic thinking. In fact, chess and the Talmud's approach have some things in common. Every situation is examined and analyzed down to the smallest detail, and creative solutions and ways out to be found within a limited framework of laws and rules. Gerntz goes on to describe several historical chess interactions where chess and Jews could have evolved together. He even quotes Rashi, a commentator on Talmud. He writes, "While chess is not associated with King Solomon in traditional Jewish sources, it may be mentioned in the Talmud. In Ketubot 61b, a game called Nadrashir is brought into the discussion. Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, 1040-1105, identifies the mentioned game as ishkashish, an old French word for chess." Gerntz concludes with a wonderful story and a picture of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and his father-in-law. He writes, "In Chabad, there is a custom of playing chess on Nittelnacht, the night of the 24th of December. And there is a well-known picture showing Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson and his son-in-law, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the 7th Lubavitcher Rebbe, playing chess against each other. Chess has accompanied mankind for thousands of years, In the last 2 years, due to COVID-19 and the series of Queen's Gambit, the game has grown in popularity, and according to chess.com, around 11 million new users have registered since March 2020. Chess has always had a special place among the Jewish people, and the extraordinary attention paid to chess by medieval scholars is a mystery, as is the great success of Jewish chess players over the past 2 centuries. What is clear is that it might take some time until there will be a Jewish chess player at the top of the chess world again. This is such a special, not run-of-the-mill type column. So perfect for this time of the year. I just had to share it with you. It has tremendous detail and is worth looking at if you want to watch or read the entire piece. Next up is another column that takes us in a very different direction. This one was written by Muli Peleg. It was published in the Jerusalem Post on December 18th, and it's entitled, "Why the BDS Campaign is Futile." Opinion? Subtitle: The more one is attacked and vilified, the more defensive modes of operation take over. The thesis is straightforward. The BDS movement will fail because they are wrong, and the more public they become, the more they activate lovers of Israel to rush to her defense. This is how Peleg begins. The popularity of the BDS, boycott and divestment and sanctions movement, in recent years, especially in universities and colleges across the United States, can be understood and even coveted from the ingenious and naive perspective. After all, what could be more justified and worthier than alleviating the misfortune and suffering of an innocent people? But this is precisely where the double-edged sword of this initiative lies. Boycotting Israel cannot and will not assuage the genuine ongoing misery of the Palestinians. Sanctions and divestment will only serve to augment their anguish rather than lessen it. There are several reasons why the BDS effort is futile and counterproductive. First, the old and recurrent psychological pattern of rally around the flag and circle the bandwagon is acutely reawakened. The more one is attacked and vilified, the more defensive modes of operation take over. Instead of admitting culpability, the blamed side invests its resources in trying to vindicate itself or charge back. Israel is not different in these natural instincts than any other nation or culture. On the contrary, its long historical experience of persecution renders it more trained and more capable of staving off such assaults. Peleg now goes into great detail explaining why BDS will fail. But in the end, it all comes down to several facts. The BDS arguments are false, all of them. He concludes this way. Like many others in the world, BDS was fueled and sustained by misguided interactions between 2 national movements, Jewish and Palestinians, aggravated by historical, geographical, and psychological circumstances. The only way to make amends for the continuing woes both sides experienced is by rebuilding and reconstructing their relationships and setting them on the right course. A vision and a work plan the BDS movement does not understand. This is an excellent but very, very long essay. I recommend that everyone take the time to read it. You can find it, of course, in the Jerusalem Post, jpost.com. Coming up, commentary through cartoons, where pictures tell the story. I want to show you 3 cartoons and memes today, and then we'll have a special whimsical holiday musical interlude, a parody of Elton John's music around the story of Hanukkah. But first, this is a headline which attests to the humor in real-life situations and the stupidity of some criminals. The headline reads, "Man running from cops stops to pet cats, goes to jail." Yeah, that's what happens. The next joke up is actually a jab at the World Cup of Qatar. Like all sporting events, spectators all have drinks in their hands. The difference is that this event, the drinks are chocolate milk, root beer, cream soda, fruit punch. Yes, the Qataris refuse to permit beer to be consumed or sold or even brought into the country. so the fans had to make do and quench their thirst with soft drinks and not beer. This last meme is very funny. A man in camouflage is wearing fluorescent yellow vest. The meme reads, "Dude needs to make up his mind about being seen or not." That's funny. And now the Jewish a cappella group 613 treats us to a very funny parody of Elton John and Hanukkah. It is 4 minutes long and worth every second. I hope you enjoy this Hanukkah.
Jews are ready, donuts with jelly, latkes in the pan, Chanukah, we love to see ya. Tiny dreidels in our hands, spin a gimel, tiny dreidel. Spears and rocks. Not today, you'll never find them on a block. And throughout all the ages, God has been a rock. And I think it's gonna be a long 8 nights to celebrate the festival of lights. I think we're gonna have a real good time. I hope this recipe will come out right. I've never made zucchiniot at home. No, 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 no. I'm like the bees, they lit their lights like the candles in the window. Always knowing they'd say victory when the Greeks came in. So true, but then a miracle occurred. It burned for 8 nights through. Don't you know that we're still standing each and every year? 'Cause the Jews are true survivors. Yeah, we beat the Seleucids. Yeah, the oil kept burning after all 8 nights. Like Judah and the Maccabees who wouldn't give up on the fight. We're still standing.
In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Good news for the young girls of Afghanistan. According to a statement from the Taliban government, Afghan girls were allowed to take their high school graduation exams. What makes this decision so important is that the girls have been banned from schools and from classrooms since the Taliban took over the country last year. According to 2 documents from the Taliban Ministry of Education, which were obtained by the Associated Press, the decision applies to most, but not all, Afghan's provinces, where the winter school break starts in late December. And Shula Kitab, head of the Kabul Education Department, provided few details, and it was not clear how many teenage girls would be able to take the exam. However, one of the documents from Kabul Education Department indicated that the exams would run from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. A second document signed by Hibalullah Agha, the education minister, who took office in September, said the tests would be held in 31 out of 34 Afghan provinces. The 3 excluded provinces, Kandahar, Helmand, and Nimroz, have a different timetable for the school year, and the high school graduation exams typically take place at a different time of the year. This is a massive step forward, if true, not just for women, young girls and women in Afghanistan, but for Afghanistan in general. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister announced that all bets would be off if Iran gets an operational nuclear weapon, with Gulf Arab states moving to guarantee their security. Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud made the announcement in the course of an interview with the World Policy Conference in Abu Dhabi. He said, and I'm quoting here, "We are in a very dangerous space in the region. You can expect that regional states will certainly look towards how they can ensure their own security," unquote. According to the United States Central Command, which is called CENTCOM, a press release that they issued, 2 militants belonging to the Islamic State, formerly known as Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIS we call it, or ISIL, were killed in eastern Syria following a helicopter raid. CENTCOM spokesman Joe Buccino reported that one of the targets killed was an ISIS Syrian province official. In his statement, Buccino said, "ISIS continues to represent a threat to the security and stability of the region. The death of these ISIS officials will disrupt the terrorist organization's ability to further plot and carry out destabilizing attacks in the Middle East." Think of ISIS leadership like the chain link fence. Remove 1 or 2 of the links, and it takes a while to repair the chain and get up and running again. Palestinian Authority announced that it had identified 9 Palestinian migrants from the Gaza Strip who drowned off the coast of Tunisia after their boat capsized en route to Europe. Gazans are attempting to escape from Gaza in any way they can. They're going to great lengths to reach Europe. There is no easy way out of the Gaza Strip. Gaza's border with Egypt and with Israel are closed. The airports are located in Israel or in Egypt or in Jordan. Gazans cannot get out of Gaza easily. Hamas authorities in Gaza announced the discovery of 60 tombs in an ancient burial site dating back to the Roman era. The work crews have been excavating the site since it was discovered last January during preparations for an Egyptian-funded housing project. Khiam al-Bitar, a researcher from the Hamas-run Ministry of Antiquities and Tourism, said a total of 63 graves have been identified, and that a set of bones and artifacts from one tomb was dating back to the 2nd century. Jerusalem has announced that Israel deported a Palestinian lawyer and activist named Salah Hamori to France. Hamori, Israel maintains, has ties to the banned militant or terrorist group PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and he has been working on their behalf in the area. The French government objected to the deportation, but they have no say in the matter. Hamori was held in administrative detention while his deportation was being processed. According to Israel's Minister of Justice, they said, and this is a quote, "I'm happy to announce that justice was served today, and the terrorist Salah Hamori was deported from Israel." Iranian officials arrested one of their country's most famous actresses on charges of spreading falsehoods about the nationwide protests that have been gripping, practically overtaking the country. State media broadcast her arrest as part of their campaign of national intimidation. With this arrest, they are telling Iranian public, all of them, no one, no matter how popular they may be, is immune from punishment. If you challenge our leadership, they say, you will suffer the consequences. The report was actually issued in IRNA. They indicated that Tarna Adesati, the star, Oscar-winning movie star in The Salesman, was detained a week after she made a post on Instagram expressing solidarity with the first man recently executed for crimes committed during the nationwide protests. According to the report published on state media's official Telegram channel, Adelusti was arrested because she did not provide any documents in line with her claims. That was on a national affiliated news network. A Syrian military facility housing U.S. forces and located in the eastern province of Deir al-Sayr came under rocket attack from a nearby area. U.S. forces are in the area because it is an energy-rich region in Syria, and Washington is determined to secure the natural resources located there, especially oil and gas. Citing local sources, the Arabic service of Russia's Sputnik news agency reported that the rockets landed in the vicinity of the U.S.-controlled Al-Omar oil field, causing several explosions in the area. But despite the attack, there were no reports of serious injuries or deaths. And so far, no group has claimed responsibility for the attack. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. Hanukkah starts on the 25th of the Hebrew month of Kislev. Gifts are not really part of Hanukkah. That tradition was borrowed from the Christian world around us and the commercialism of the United States and elsewhere. There are two essential elements to Hanukkah, to miracles involved in Hanukkah. One of them is the miracle of the small amount of oil which lasted for 8 days instead of just one. The second and bigger miracle was the military victory of the Maccabees, aka the Hasmoneans, against the Syrian Greeks, also known as the Seleucids. This was more than a military victory. It was a battle of monotheists against pagans. The few from Israel they were the monotheists, against the mighty world pagan power, the Seleucid Greeks of Syria. The Maccabees repelled the pagans and were able to rededicate, which is what the word Hanukkah means, rededication. They were able to rededicate the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. That's part one of the story, the good part of the story. Part two is not so warm and fuzzy, but I don't want to put a damper on everyone's happy Hanukkah spirit. I promise to tell you that part of the story, part two of the story, in the piquante future piece. But for now, enjoy the beauty and delight of Hanukkah. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.